On the field, off the field, sports talk, entertainment, and more. This is Sauce on the Side.
Well, hello there, Dippers, and welcome back to episode 144 of the Sauce on the Side podcast. As always, Dippers, I'm your host, Drake, joined by the man, the producer, Mr. Leighton Bib Shavington.
In 1996, the Bulls won the NBA championship in 6 games. But they won the final game 86-75. That is right. The 76-win team won a championship in a game, scoring 86 points, and their opponent, the other best team in the NBA, scored 75. In about 15 minutes, Thomas will tell us how the NBA was best in the 1990s.
Hey, defense wins championships.
Who'd they beat in that finals?
Sonics.
Yeah, Sonics.
Okay.
And,
You not watch the show, Sean?
No,
Thomas?
I did.
and our guest host throughout the quarantine, as promised, giving you the UFC picks. Went 7-4 last weekend. 3 of our dogs got beat. We do have a little bit of a bone to pick with some of our losses, but Mr. Thomas R. Shackelford.
How dare you talk about the glove and Sean Kemp like that?
Dude, okay, so
The
obviously
glove.
we have to start off everything talking about Jordan's Last Dance. We'll talk a little bit about the NFL schedule release because that was part of the sports that we got to enjoy this weekend. This weekend was actually loaded for our sports. We had Thursday NFL schedule release. Saturday we had UFC 249. Sunday we had The Last Dance. So it actually seemed like we're trending in the right direction now.
Yep.
So first off, Jordan, The Last Dance documentary. Usually whenever we start off the show, we can say, oh, they had the Rodman episode, they had this episode. I feel like last week we talked about how, I think it was 6, they started getting away from like specific individuals, specific events, and being able to just name it by that. This week it basically took us through the first part of the 1998 playoffs. You can tell everything's now starting to come full circle. They're starting to wrap everything up since there is only 2 episodes left. Guys, what were your initial reactions of episode 7 and episode 8?
Episode 8, I really liked towards the end when we got into the Tennessee Bulls thing. I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, okay, I'm trying to figure out how you do episodes. I'm like, okay, wait, how are they going to do this? And then I noticed what one of you can do. It can make such a long period of time happen in like 6 minutes, and you're just totally satisfied by it.
Yes.
I realized it because I looked at my phone and instead of like, shit, they're going to get going with this season. They don't have the time to talk about. And then they finished. I'm like, oh, that was 6 minutes. Like.
Yeah, no, it was very, very, very quick.
Yeah, this has definitely been one of the best overall made documentaries I've seen.
Yeah, this one was like a heartbreaker. I mean, the first episode they start off with his dad. I didn't know his dad died like that.
Neither did I. I know he was
I just
shot.
assumed he got sick, had a heart attack. I did not know that he just got murdered by 2 kids just for sleeping on the side of the road in a nice car, basically. That was pretty sad to see him go through the baseball thing. I thought was cool, and this is my real answer for why that game against the Sonics probably was so low scoring. I mean, Jordan said it. He had other stuff on his mind. That was on Father's Day, like probably the first Father's Day, maybe second since his dad had passed away. He probably wasn't all there that night.
Yeah.
And that video of him like crying and heaving in the back, I was teary-eyed last night. And I was like, these sons of bitches, like they got me. I didn't know we were doing this. Like, come on now. Every week I feel like I come in here and I'm like, oh, this has been my favorite. This one has probably been my favorite.
7 and 8. They were really good. The whole episode 7 and 8 are probably good. I feel like the Dream Team segment the most still, but the whole episode, these 2 are probably the best too.
Yeah, I really enjoyed these 2 just because it covered so much time and covered so much stuff, and it didn't just pigeonhole us to hey, we're only going to talk about Dennis Rodman. It kind of brought everything back together, and it even it seemed like it overlapped with the Rodman thing, where they're like, oh, now we're going to reintroduce Rodman, and we've basically caught back up to where you were whenever you first started watching this thing in episode 3.
It also did a really good job of kind of like Leighton said, where they used the baseball thing to kind of buff over that insanely bad season they had, where their record was like, at some point it was like damn near 500.
I think they were 34 and 31.
So like just below 500. But so that's when they kind of moved into the baseball stuff. But then they kind of brought it back around. But another thing I thought they did really good was kind of show some of those players. You see where BJ. Is it B.J. Armstrong?
B.J. Armstrong.
Yeah, B.J. Armstrong, when he leaves, then you see when Kerr came in, then you see when Horace leaves. They finally did our boy Horace justice. They finally show him
getting carried off the court.
Yeah, so they did cool. This one, again, last week I said I can't wait till they got to have one that kind of featured Sean Kemp. They didn't feature Kemp as much. It was a little more about Peyton. But I'll tell you right now, at the time, Kemp, when I was a kid playing basketball, I had a Kemp jersey. Nobody had a Peyton jersey, I'm telling you. Nobody had the defensive guy. You wanted the dude that could dunk from half court's jersey. So they had him, and then you had Horace, where he kind of blossomed, which I don't think he blossomed in Orlando. He was just as good in Chicago.
Yeah.
But then in Orlando, I guess he was more, Penny was young, Shaq was young. He was probably like that leader. I thought they did a good job there, because if you just watch, they had these guys, like when they talked about Oakley leaving, and so you're like, you had this good core of guys, and I forget who it was a couple episodes ago, but they said they thought that maybe 92, 93 team was actually the best Bulls team.
Oh, it probably was.
But then you see pieces start going here and there. Well, this one kind of showed where those guys ended up, and just maybe not, this is why he left. But like Horace, why would Krause let Horace's contract go? They didn't get Rodman until 3 seasons later, right? So
he had good coach.
They had the first season. No, they had Horace first season. He was gone. The bad season, they didn't. And then they got Rodman. So they clearly were missing a rebound and defensive big man in there. So I thought that was cool. To bring the baseball stuff in it. I didn't know Terry Francona was his freaking manager.
I had no idea.
When they popped him up, I was like, oh my God, it's the Red Sox, dude. What's he doing?
It's really awesome. It's really great how Universe just booked out that way. It's just like Terry Francona, guy everybody knows.
Has he ever not played for an awesome best coaches of all time?
Doug Collins, because you ever had a Doug Collins,
and he was pretty damn good.
Yeah, he's still on TV.
Yeah.
No, I thought it was pretty crazy. I feel like this was an episode, like these episodes, I caught myself pausing it more than I ever had with this. Usually, you're watching it and you're just like, what? Wait a second. And so I'm pausing it and I'm like, yeah, that's the exact same year Terry Francona was there. Looks like he was Michael Jordan's freaking baseball
Birmingham
coach.
When that popped up, I didn't text you guys, but I immediately thought of you, Leighton, of course, and I'm just like, how in the hell can you explain this? You cannot explain this.
No, that was just dumb luck, I think. And then they show that he hit 200. The one thing that I thought that I was going to bring in to talk about was before they even started talking about his father's death, all they brought up that his father had died. And at this point, I'm like, okay, wonder if we're going to get the conspiracy theory. I've talked to you about the conspiracy theory before, and you as well, where the whole Jordan thing, nobody understood why he took time off. And there's actually a real conspiracy theory out there that, hey, he got suspended by David Stern. They didn't want to, publicize it to everybody. He's basically going to walk away from the game. He's suspended a year and a half. And everything really adds up whenever you really think about it. And then, his father dies. A lot of people attribute all this to him getting in such bad gambling problems that, hey, this is why these people came and killed his father. This is why he walked away from the game, and basically just in abrupt fashion. And I cannot believe that they actually brought up the conspiracy theory on television yesterday.
Yeah, I didn't know about it. Yeah, I forgot you told me about that. But then it's just how insane of an idea that was. There's just no freaking way.
They went all in. I mean, they didn't hold back. They went all in last night on it. They went from the gambling all the way up to the suspension and David Stern. But say he had a gambling debt and his dad did get killed, that would have nothing to do with suspending him unless it was a situation where he was throwing games, or
betting
something.
on games.
It has to be that, yeah.
You got to.
I could never see MJ I could see him gambling on games, but gambling on himself
Dude,
to where he wouldn't be throwing
that
games.
guy that we've watched through 8 shows now, that dude does not. It's like
No,
Pete
he
Rose.
never bet against himself.
No.
Pete Rose never bet against himself either.
Absolutely not.
He got blackballed for betting, but guys like that do not throw games.
No.
There's no chance. There's no chance they could live, especially Jordan. Pete Rose, I don't know as much about him, but just watch, even just if you could just watch these shows without ever knowing, being alive and watching him play, for a fact a man like that could not live with himself and throw a game. It's just not possible.
I absolutely agree, and it wouldn't be about the money. It'd be more about him just winning. And we saw that before, where he's going up and he's playing dollar blackjack games with guys, just because he wants their money too. So it's not a sense of he's chasing that bottom dollar into gambling. He's just addicted to actually winning the bets, and he wouldn't have bet against himself just to win a bet and lose an actual game.
Yeah.
And speaking of the documentary going all in, one thing I haven't talked about was Steve Cook getting hit in the face. I knew that had happened. But I was I wanted to tell that story because it's not that long of a story. I just wanted to hit on that, and they did.
Yeah.
This thing, documentary hitting everything.
That was badass too. I love that Kerr goes down, jumps up, punches him in the chest because he's only 5'5". He was aiming for the chin. I loved how Jordan was I left and I just felt like the smallest man. I just punched the littlest guy on the team. We've all been there where, you did something to some little wiener on the playground or something, and you just rest of your day man, I'm an asshole.
Yeah. I thought one of the funniest things of this whole entire documentary, you guys might not have picked up on it because it was so subtle, and I can't believe I picked up on it on myself. But we've heard people that are big time media players in this thing, just openly cussing. Michael Wilbon dropped the F-bomb, and I'm sitting there thinking, I'm all right, well, what just happened? Yeah. This is crazy. J.A. Adonde yesterday actually dropped a cuss word, and they bleeped it out.
I noticed that.
Did they actually bleep it?
They bleeped him.
I meant to bring this up a couple weeks ago. I can't believe they're cussing like they are. They're saying they're every word, but I did not catch them.
Yeah, no, I wasn't sure that, because I looked down my phone as he said that, so I didn't know if he cut himself off or if they did. But I just assumed that he just stopped himself naturally because he's probably in the habit of not cussing on TV.
Maybe he wouldn't sign the disclosure. He's you gotta take that out, man. You gotta take that out.
I'm almost positive because I remember hearing the bleep and I'm wait a second. I know I've seen Michael Wilbon cuss, and watching Michael Wilbon cuss is a whole lot dirtier than watching J.A. Adonde cuss.
No, you know what, Sean? Actually, right now, J.A. Adonde is the head of journalism at Northwestern University. He might have actually had him cut that out.
I guarantee he did.
Maybe.
I didn't think about that. Yeah, he's doing that now.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so he might have actually had them cut that out.
Oh, he almost had to. One of the things from yesterday that I keep catching back up to, dude. I feel so bad for Scotty Burrell. I feel like he was just Jordan's ultimate doorman.
Did you say he only played there a year?
One season. And he's gotten more shit maybe than Krause and Horace Grant.
Hey, Jordan said, don't come there if you can't handle the heat. I think Skip tweeted it. Somebody else tweeted comparing him to LeBron. LeBron would have just had the guy traded instead of pushing him hard. There's not one guy, and Jordan started crying when he said that. Did you guys catch that? He had to lean in off the camera, and all he was talking about was people saying that it was the nice guy question. Do you think that you being so hard on people changed your nice guy image? And he was just explaining look, he kind of went through it, and he was look, you ask any teammate I ever played with, I never asked them to do anything that I myself hadn't done or was willing to do. And he's just basically, and he started crying. How many times have we seen him cry? Not many. I mean,
maybe the only time we saw him cry, it turned into a meme.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, on this documentary.
Oh no, I'm talking about in his lifetime.
Well, yeah, true. But I mean, on this documentary, he's talked about his dad dying. I mean, that whole episode about his dad dying, he didn't cry. He was just look, my dad taught me to turn it into a positive. But a lot of people whose dad they can't talk about it. That's very, very personal thing. he started crying over a question of whether it was better to basically be a nice guy or be a guy that pushed to be the best basketball player of all time. He felt more emotional about defending what he did to push those teams to 3 separate three-peats. That shows you right there that he was all in. He sacrificed everything he ever had to win those champions, to be considered. And now then you could compare it to guys like LeBron and those guys today. Have they done that? I don't think you can honestly. I don't think there's any other basketball player on this planet you could honestly say that was their thing. Like, just 100%. Everything they had in their life was, nothing was more important than winning. And I think,
go back to what he said about the Suns player. I had to beat him because if I don't beat him, people think he's almost as good as I am. I can't have that happen.
And that came up last night a couple times. Armstrong had the pretty good game. The next game he went like 1 for 6 and dominated.
They said that he had 4 points or something.
And then
I think it was 2 points actually.
Gary Payton. Payton had a solid game. I forget the one dude's game.
Had like 37 points.
Yeah, and Jordan made up a story about he made up a story in his own head about the guy saying, "Hey, nice game, Jordan," so he could murder the guy the next game. Like,
piss himself off.
And he didn't tell people that story wasn't true until like 30 years later, and he's like, "No, that wasn't true. I just had to get myself going." Like, the dude's insane. He's on a different level of competition than everybody else on this planet. And you guys know more about baseball than me. Going into Double-A, never playing any organized baseball since the time you're a high schooler, going into Double-A baseball, 13 straight game hitting streak until they start throwing them breaking balls. I don't think Terry Francona is a guy that's going to bullshit about somebody making it to the pros or not.
No.
There were several guys on there that said, I think Francona even said, had he had 15 or 1,200 at bats, he would have found a way into the pros. And,
I agree with
and
him.
he batted over 200. The guy, had that strike not happen, he may have stayed in baseball and become a pro baseball player. I think the only reason he came back was just because they struck. And he was, like, well, I'm not going to cross a picket line. Then next thing you know, he's showing up to practice. He's just bored showing up to a practice, and next thing you know, you got another 3-peat on your hands.
It's either, man, I can go to the casino and have some money and go play basketball.
How do you think Ewing and Barkling and those guys are like? They wake up to the news like, what? He's doing what? He's practicing today? Oh God! Like, I just can't. What a weird time.
Hakeem got really pissed off.
I'll tell you one of the
chance to have 3-peat.
So there's 2 things here. First thing I want to talk about is B.J. Armstrong. So whenever B.J. Armstrong, they showed that graphic, they were like, they had three of the Bulls players became All-Stars that season without Jordan. B.J. Armstrong was one of those guys. And I was sitting there, and I'm like, man, B.J. Armstrong, like, he's always talked about just this guy that just shot threes, basically, for the Bulls. Like, he was a good role player. I didn't realize that he ended up having an All-Star nod. And as I'm watching this, I said in my head, I was like, man, what happened to B.J. Armstrong after he left there? Oh, I bet he got overpaid by the Hornets and ended up just being on a bunch of mediocre teams. I'm not kidding you. 5 minutes later, they start showing highlights of the Bulls team playing the Hornets that were led by B.J. Armstrong, and I'm like, dude, the NBA has not changed at all.
No.
You have a guy who jumps into a spot, takes full advantage of playing with other great players, gets an All-Star nod, gets overpaid by the Hornets. The rest is history. We relive that same exact thing
over and
year in year out with mediocre guys who go play for the Hornets.
You think people would learn? Like, just look back at this. Look back in history. How many guys that had a peak season then get overpaid? They get this big offers from some crumb bum team. They go there, and then 2-3 years they're out of the league.
Pigs get fed, hogs go to slaughter.
That's the truth. That's the truth.
The other thing, Patrick Ewing. Every single time Patrick Ewing gets to the top of his career, here comes Jordan just running back down. Dude, even Scottie Pippen dunking on him and pushing him down and then walking over the top of him.
That was fucking brutal.
I'm like, dude,
poor Patrick.
we have kids that are like 17, 18 years old now watching this thinking, man, this Patrick Ewing, he was just a doormat his whole life. This guy wasn't really that good whenever, hey, Patrick Ewing, one of the greatest centers to actually ever play basketball.
You know, this has destroyed his reputation, but absolutely fucking exploded Phil Jackson's.
Yes.
And Phil Jackson's life has been saved because of this documentary.
Yes.
Last night, especially, Scottie Pippen said, "Fuck Scottie Pippen." Kukoc just sunk the shot, and Jackson just walked off the court, and they shot him walking off the court.
Yes, I thought that was hilarious. Whenever they drew up the play for Kukoc, it just makes everybody's like, yeah, man, Phil Jackson, he's a genius. We're going to go ahead and just we'll give him a pass on everything that's happened with the Knicks. Like, he has had probably the biggest come up of any player, any person even remotely tied to this whole entire Bull thing. He's had this huge come up, but then you flip the coin and you look at Patrick Ewing, and it's like, man, he might have taken the biggest reputation hit of everybody. Even in his championship game in college,
right?
MJ hits the shot to beat him. So it's just like a terrible thing for Patrick Ewing, great thing for Phil Jackson. Overall, this documentary just absolutely killed it.
Yeah, I forgot Michael Jordan played Ewing in college. Michael Jordan is like that kid in high school. Again, when what sport you play, that's just like right there with you, and you just can't even beat him. But Patrick Ewing's life is professional basketball. They're both really good at.
Yes. Is Georgetown, are they sponsored by Jordan?
Georgetown, I'm not sure.
I feel
Surely, I hope he went in there and he's like, everybody take off your shoes.
We're not wearing these.
burning.
I'm almost positive that Georgetown's basketball team...
While you're looking that up, so Leighton said, Hakeem, where the hell did the Houston Rockets come from? And they won in 94 and 95.
Yeah,
they
Clyde Drexler went there from Portland.
Okay.
And Hakeem was already, I don't know, I think Hakeem's the top 10 player of all time. And he was already kicking ass.
Okay, so, you look and you had, basically you had... Well, the
it was essentially 5% of the jam, but in the NBA.
So even just I'm looking at the finals of not even guys that won, but you had Lakers, Trailblazers, Suns jump in there, and then you got the Knicks, then you got the Magic, but then the Rockets were the winners of those years against the Knicks and the Magic. So, but we haven't really, especially on the documentary, they haven't really brought those guys up.
And speaking of the Magic team. Remember last week how this had been on this a catalog of a advertisement for 30 for 30s? Got Magic one in there last night.
Look at that logo on the Georgetown basketball jerseys. What is that?
That's Jordan. Yep.
No!
On Georgetown's basketball uniforms. So
Poor bastards.
Patrick Ewing has been owned by Michael Jordan his whole life. Now he's like, I'm going to go coach Georgetown. And then they're like, here, sir, here's your coaching attire that you have to wear. And it's a button-up shirt with MJ's logo on it.
Poor
and it's
bastard.
like, the guy has owned me my whole life. And even in my coaching career, he has found a way to continue to own me.
Yeah, I think I've seen that 30 for 30. I don't remember what it's called, but I remember Magic Moment. I remember because didn't they get a bunch of lottery picks? They got
back-to-back first-round picks.
Yeah, so that's how they ended up with Penny and Shaq, wasn't it?
Yeah, they had the 12th best odds of something to get number one pick. Well, I haven't been the worst odds for number one pick, and they got number one pick.
It's like whenever D Rose got picked by the Bulls.
Yeah, it's the same idea, same thing.
Oh, that was funny to see a skinny Shaq running. He was still jogging though. He was still jogging back on D there. Overall, man, this thing's been so awesome, especially during this time. I think had it dropped, it would have still been huge. But during this time with nothing, obviously it's going to be a lot bigger. It's been badass.
Oh yeah, and really, if it would have came out, would you have committed yourself to watch all 10 episodes? You know what I'm saying?
Not live. I would have recorded them and watched them later. But this is like last night. I was outside building a chicken coop with my daughter, and I saw it was 7:58, and I was like, "Hey, hon, we gotta get in there." So gave her the phone. She watched Disney Plus. I watched Last Dance. It's something that I'm gonna watch live every night.
For sure.
No, it's one of those things that had this had came out at a different time, and we would have had to catch up on episodes. I don't care how much you enjoy 10 hours of one thing, it becomes a chore at that point.
It's a lot.
And you're almost having to force yourself. You're like, I got to get one more episode in. Right now, the way that they've done it has become more than a chore of watching 10 hours of a documentary than this is just part of my life. This is just what I do. And it's actually, I think, a whole lot more enjoyable that way. I'm very excited. Anything else before we kind of jump off of episode 7 and 8? We only got 2 more.
I can't believe we only have 2 more. But I think we hit it all.
That makes me so sad.
Makes me sad. I'm already sad.
NFL schedule release was this week. Obviously, it was something that, it's sports in some capacity, something that we can actually look at, get excited for. I think that there's going to be, just off of looking at the top, they come out and they say, oh, the Patriots, they have the hardest schedule in the NFL. The Ravens, they have the easiest schedule in the NFL. Everybody's speculating, even though so many good players have changed hands, so many teams look so much different. We have a lot of coaching changes. First, just right off the top, NFL schedule release is one of my favorite times of the year because everybody is either stuck in I think there's 3 different mindsets that people have. If your team is going to be bad this season, you immediately talk yourself into 8-8. You're like, we can go 8-8, and I see these 3 games on here that are 50-50 toss-up games, and if we win those 3 games, we could go from a 8-8 to 11-5. So everybody gets in that mindset. I'll even go 10-6. Fans of bad teams are stuck in the mindset of 8-8 or 10-6.
Yeah.
Then you have the people that look at the schedule and they say, "Oh yeah, we're guaranteed going to be 12-4." They're the 12-4 guys. They say if this season, if the rails fall off, we're gonna be 11-5. But I see us being 12-4. I can even talk myself into 13-3, maybe even 12-2 or 14-2 if everything falls in the right place. You have those people. Then you have the people that have a playoff team from the year prior. They go ahead 16-0.
Yeah.
I do not see a game that we should be underdogs in. But they did come out and say the Jacksonville Jaguars should be underdogs in every single game this season. That. So a lot of emotions right off the top. What were your initial thoughts on the schedule release, Leighton?
I thought it was a good job. I did a brief overview of it all. It looks like all the games. There were a lot of really good games. It seems like every Monday night games are better this season.
Oh
hopefully.
Yeah, Monday Night Football looks amazing this week.
And they also got Booger and Sister out of the booth. That's another plus Monday Night Football. Big up for them. Thursday night games. Did good last year. Pretty safe this year too. I don't think they're doing division opponents again. So they should never do that ever again. That was just absolutely wrong.
What was this?
Whenever they used to do division games every Thursday night, and the game, the game was always awful.
The games were always terrible.
Because by week 6, you get a team that's 7-0 versus a team that's 0-7. Yeah, I liked it.
No, I'm absolutely
They were
excited.
going to do I think for 30 minutes they were going to do a virtual release of it, on TV, primetime release. And I got that update, and then I guess it just didn't happen. So I guess someone decided no.
So I've already came to the conclusion of where I see the Bears season going, Leighton C.
Let's hear it.
So I've already got us rattled off 2-0, starting off against the Lions and the Giants. Then playing against the Falcons. Falcons are always a team to just go ahead and let you down every single season. Mm-hmm. So I have us at 3-0. Then there's a 2-week test that I see. If the Bears make it through these 2 weeks doing well, they're going to be a playoff team. If they finish out these 2 weeks and they are sub 500, we're in trouble. You have the Colts in Chicago, and then you have the Buccaneers on Thursday Night Football, which is crazy that the Buccaneers, Tom Brady coming to Chicago on that Thursday night. I can honestly see the Bears going 5-0 up to this point, and if they do, I'm writing us into the playoffs. But if we are under 500 at that point, tanking for Trevor Lawrence. That's my opinion.
Think so?
Oh, yeah. If we get through week 5 and we are a sub 500 team, wrap it up. Let's get Trevor Lawrence. Let's try to get Justin Fields at worst. Let's get us a quarterback, because if we make it through that stretch being under 500, we have to blow the whole thing up.
Well, that's good. According to Matt Miller, this report, Justin Fields could fall to number 13 in that upcoming NFL draft. So it should be easy for you to get him.
I don't see Justin Fields falling below 10 in any possible draft scenario.
But no, I don't know. The Bears, look, the Bears defense should be better than it was last year. Last year was still really good.
The offense could not have been worse.
Yeah, the offense last year was definitely this year. They got Nick Foles, got Trubisky. I don't think they're going to tank for Trevor Lawrence that early in the season because they got Nick Foles. And if they're all 3-2 or 4-2 or whatever, I think they will try to win the games. But ultimately, I think Nick Foles and Trubisky both going after next season.
Yeah, I think Nick Foles
might be there
just because I think that this is actually going to go well. Just looking at the schedule right off the top, a lot of the games that I see as 50-50 games are at home. Also, during NFL schedule release, There is nobody on this planet that looks at their schedule and doesn't at least have them winning 3 of their divisional games. They think that they're going to split with every single team. If you have a bad team, you've already talked yourself into, all right, we're going to beat the Jaguars once, we'll lose to them once. We're going to beat the Titans once, we're going to lose to them once. Like, your divisional opponents, you just go ahead and you say, we're going to be 500 in that department.
And then you get to the point, well, okay, shit, we can't go home with anybody else. Okay, so when on the road here, lose to them at home probably.
Have you seen the Texans' schedule yet?
I know they start out with the Chiefs.
The next game after... So this is hilarious. So we've talked about how Bill O'Brien's completely blown up this roster and absolutely decimated this team. Obviously, they don't have DeAndre Hopkins, who's their best player. DJ Reader was their highest player whenever it comes to Pro Football Focus. They lose him. So you could realistically argue that they lost their best offensive and best defensive player. Week 1, at Arrowhead. Week 2, at home against the Ravens. Week 3, on the road to play the Steelers. Week 4, at home playing the Vikings.
Damn.
That is a gauntlet. You have 4 straight playoff teams. I kind of count the Steelers as a playoff team from last year. Because
very good.
If they would have had the 7 teams make it in like they did that they're going to do this year, they would have been in. They were 8-8 without Big Ben. And then, obviously, they have to play the Titans twice, who's tough. They have to play Green Bay as well. They have to play the Patriots. They have to play the Colts. They'll play them twice. They play the Bears and Packers. So the Texans, 7.5 wins from Vegas. I think that's probably going to be an under there.
Yeah.
Because the Colts are much better, and the Titans are probably going to be better than them yet again.
Gosh, poor Deshaun Watson. He can't catch a break.
No. You look at those first 4 games, Deshaun Watson has had trouble standing upright. You play against the Steelers, you play against the Vikings, you play against the Patriots, even the Chiefs. He's going to be one defeated man after this run. Even the Ravens' defense is going to put him on his back at least 20 times. So, definitely not a good look there. Anything else on the schedule release that you saw that you really wanted to point out?
I can only tell you we're going to be the 2 most vital games this season. January 3rd. Oh, crap. It went away from me. I'm sorry. January 3rd, 49ers at Seahawks.
Oh, easily.
And December 27th, Eagles at Cowboys.
Yeah, and there's also, I think that January 3rd game, that's January 3rd day, Bears-Packers. I'm almost positive it is. One thing that they've talked about is that they've said, well, we may push the season back, and what they'll do with those they'll keep say if they push the season back 4 weeks, they'll scrap the first 4 weeks, they'll move those to the back end of the schedule, and then they'll just start the season like they were going to, and they'll play, say they go through week 5 is going to be the first game, if they end up pushing the season back. You'll play your Week 5 opponent that you're already scheduled to all the way up through Week 17. You'll play everybody you're supposed to. Then they'll take 1 through 4 and move it to the back end of the schedule. If that schedule gets pushed back 4 weeks, do you know who opens the season up?
Who opens the season up?
Tom Brady at Chicago, Buccaneers versus Bears.
That is hell of a open the season up.
You know that's what's going to happen, right? And it's just going to eat my heart out. Because I do not need Tampa Bay coming in with a full week's worth of practice, a whole offseason worth of practice, heading into Chicago to beat the Bears. Because the only time teams lose on Thursday night at home is whenever it's week 1 of the NFL season.
That's right. And we will talk about obviously talk about the teams more in depth on the future, but you also get Bruce Arians, coaching genius, with a really smart quarterback. And we know what happened last season, opening night in Chicago. You were there.
3 points.
Not a pretty sight. 3
points. It's going to be bad. Yeah, I've already talked myself into that's what's going to happen. That's going to be the week
You've
1
already
in the NFL.
been preparing yourself
for the Buccaneers, because then after that we play like the Saints, the Vikings, the Titans, the Rams. We run right into the gauntlet. And now my first 4 weeks that I penciled us in 4-0 on, we're going to start 0-1 against the Buccaneers.
It's just going to happen? Since you have those first games you went to the back, you're going to be bad in the middle of the season, you're going to think, yep, so alone Justin Fields, here we come. You're going to battle off 3 or 4 in a row to end the season.
No.
And you're going to wind up pick 8 and get some wide receiver probably.
No, I see it exactly going like that. We'll be like 3-9 or 4-8 going into those last 4 weeks, rattle off our 4 wins, and then there we go. 8-8 to end the season, and we're picking at the middle of the draft.
Raquan Davis, come on down.
Yes, isn't good. Not good. All right, so Mr. Shackelford, we had some fights this last weekend. Obviously, probably, what do you say? One of the best cards you've ever watched?
Oh, every fight was competitive. Really, the only one that you're kind of like, was the Karate Hottie versus Esparza, which then we felt like wasn't a great decision. But every fight was fun as hell. Main event was amazing. You had some insane knockouts. You had some very back and forth action. And then you consider everything that went on the last few months, way up there.
Absolutely worth it. You look at this card, every single fight, like we had talked about, was competitive, maybe with the exception of Rosenstruck versus Ngannou, just because it really didn't even have time to have any action at all other than Ngannou just running him down. Your picks, though, you went 7-4 over the day. You did only have one dog winner. I think we were 1-3 in dog picks, so that was a little bit of a bummer.
But some of those, like the Watterson, I mean, she gets I don't recall, she never got taken down and just held there.
No.
She pretty much evaded all the big strikes from Esparza, and she was touching her up. And she gets a 30-27 and then a 29-28 and then a 30-27 the other way. I thought she won the fight. Cowboy, that was a very back and forth fight. He had more takedowns than Pettis. Neither guy really got rocked back and forth. You got to think the takedowns probably get him the win there. Decision goes against him. Even Verdum and Olenek, which we had Verdum, we didn't have the dog. Olenek, he comes out, just blows Verdum up in the first round, but it wasn't like it was a 10-8. I mean, it was a little bit back and forth, and then Verdum gets takedowns both the next rounds, submission attempts. There were those three fights. I felt like the Verdum one, maybe wasn't as contentious, but the other two, those were some shifty picks there.
Yes, even Cowboy Cerrone versus Anthony Pettis, that was a 50-50 decision that I thought, honestly, Cowboy had won. You look at all three rounds. All three rounds were very, very close rounds. And you look at what was the deciding factor. Did one guy do one thing to put him over the top? First round, very back and forth. Cowboy seals a takedown. I thought it won him the round. Next round comes out. They were very, very back and forth. Neither guy got put into any real damage. Cowboy gets a takedown. I figured that would seal him that round. Third round rolls around. They're back and forth, 50-50. Cowboy doesn't get a takedown, but he lands the biggest strike of the night. Almost puts Anthony Pettis down for the count. I thought that was the deciding factor for round 3. Turns out, in the eyes of the judges, Cowboy Cerrone lost 2 of those 3 rounds. I really don't know how all 3 judges scored that one 29-28 in favor of Pettis.
Yeah, close fights. You hate to see them. You hate to see losses like that, And I think I remember Rogan saying at one point during one of the early or later fights, he was like, "Hey, there was some really weird decisions earlier. I'd hate to be a fighter in this position, I forget, he started saying that a little bit later in the card, but I'm trying to think. You had some big KOs. You had Cater, absolutely. We've never seen Stevens hit like that.
No,
I mean he hit him with that elbow. Stevens, I started thinking back. I don't recall ever seeing Stevens even hurt, let alone knocked out or knocked down. Then you had Ngannou, like you said, he just murdered Rosenstruck. Rosenstruck even did good, comes out and blasts 2 huge leg kicks on him.
Yes.
And then I think Francis is just like, I'm just going to run downhill at him. He starts running downhill, winging punches. But while it happened, you thought like, oh God, that guy got hit like 20 times. Then they slow-moed it, and that guy moves out of the way of a punch, hits a leg kick, moves out of the way of a punch, hits a punch of his own. And that happens 2 or 3 times, and then he gets clipped. And the way I could explain it, I've never seen a stoppage like that. You thought the ref was breaking up a murder. Like, he jumps in and he's screaming, "Stop, stop, stop." Like, that's how frightening that stoppage was.
Yes.
You can't get hit by Francis.
No, absolutely not.
We picked Rosenstrike. A bunch of people picked him. We thought that it 2-1 was like insane odds. I still would probably pick him. We've never seen a guy in MMA that's got absolute cannot be touched by any punch by him. Anybody can't get punched. I mean, Conor doesn't have that. He's almost Mike Tyson-esque at this point. Pretty crazy. One guy that we kind of got to talk about, we were a little impressed by him last time, Greg Hardy again comes out. That guy's hitting him with monster leg kicks.
Jorgen De Castro tore him up the first round.
I mean, you were looking at me like, what the hell, but then he made an adjustment. He said he heard DC in the crowd say he needs to check leg kicks, so he started checking them, and it changed the fight. That guy, I don't think, threw any punches like at all in the third round.
No, it was a staring contest in the third round because he couldn't get anything off.
Yeah, so Greg Hardy looked good.
One thing about the Michelle Watterson decision. So you said that it was 30-27 one way, 30-27 another way, 29-28 in favor of Carla Esparza. Did you realize, so the significant strike account, Esparza landed 45, Watterson landed 44, so it was almost identical. I think Carla Esparza threw 5 more punches. Takedowns. Carla Esparza was 1 for 10 on takedowns. 1 for 10 on takedowns, and still picks up the win.
That's what I was saying. I mean, I watched it. That was one of the early ones. I mean, I wasn't like watching it as a judge, but I was watching as a guy that's watched a ton of fights, and I didn't even know she for sure got taken down the one time.
No,
that was been a down and up situation. Man, you gotta. So basically, you had one girl who's doing more technical striking, who's backing up, hitting her pop pop, and the other girl winging punches, going for a takedown, failing. That shouldn't score you any points.
No, I absolutely agree there. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about Gaethje Ferguson kind of in depth, and then we'll talk about the biggest winners and biggest losers of the night.
We got to talk about Cejudo.
Okay, okay.
In all this card,
yes, that's the one thing to take away.
One of our favorite guys retires.
Okay, we'll talk about that. Okay, let's just go ahead and get on that.
Okay.
So Henry Cejudo retires after beating Dominic Cruz. Actually, it was a very good fight. Henry Cejudo does take yes, they ended up clanking heads. He's bleeding down the side of his face. You're kind of thinking, is this going to put him in any kind of trouble? It was an accidental headbutt, easy to do against Dominic Cruz, as much head movement as he's bringing. He ends up retiring following the fight. What are your initial thoughts of Henry Cejudo's retirement?
A, Mickey told this to Rocky, women weaken legs.
That's exactly what this is.
But B,
I got a girl now.
Yeah. The real thing is, if you look back at his wrestling career, he was the youngest Olympic champion, wrestling champion at like 20, 21 maybe.
Yeah, he's very young.
He went ahead and came back through the next Olympic cycle, placed third, retired from that. A lot of people don't know this about him. He lived in a boxing gym after that. He wasn't a rich dude. He lived in a boxing gym where it was like a rat-infested boxing gym. He won the Golden Gloves. Then he gets into MMA, makes it up to here. I think this is a case of, had he retired at 20 or 21 as the youngest Olympic champion, he would, like, that cemented his legacy as one of the greats. There's a lot of shine to that. He stays the Olympic cycle. Now, I remember he was really close to one of the Brands brothers. I don't remember if it was Tom or Terry, but I want to say it was Terry, the super wild one. And actually, that first Olympic cycle, he was living with Terry. Like that's how all in he was. I think that second Olympic cycle, he didn't live with Terry. And maybe some people, the word on the street was he wasn't as committed as he was that first cycle. He still got third. I mean, he's still a bronze medalist in the Olympics. But you know what? Maybe he didn't. Maybe he got third at the trials. I'll have to look that up.
I don't even remember if he had qualified for the Olympics that year.
I'll look that up while we're talking about other stuff and get it down for sure. But basically, I think this is the thing: is he's been the peak of a sport that he worked his whole life to be. He stayed around. And then maybe the shine was off a little. The shine's, this is still, he's shining. I think it's smart. I mean, we talk all the time, like, oh, this guy's only 18, 21 years old. He's the future of the division. That may be the best he ever gets. You just don't know. So, say he beats Peter Yan next, which I would probably pick him against Peter Yan.
I would too.
Or Aljamain Sterling. I would pick him against any of those guys. Or if he goes back down to 25, I would pick him against any of those guys. But what if one of those guys clips him?
Exactly.
Then we've got then you got people saying for the rest of his life, oh, you sucked, he has
to work back up to the pinnacle of his career yet again.
And I couldn't imagine. I mean, you look theoretically. I mean, not even theoretically. You look at a lot of people. Once they lose that title, they don't. Verdum, you got Cruz, Faber. I mean, Aldo. You can go down the list. Once you win that title and you defend it a few times, or sometimes you just lose it right off the bat, that process is I couldn't imagine the mental fortitude it would take to even build you back up. That's why it's so amazing the Cruz fought so well again after a 4-year layoff. It was a good fight. It was a very good fight. I'm happy he retired, man. I think once you start thinking about it as a fighter, he's now won and defended the 25-pound title. He's won and defended the 35-pound title. First person to do that, I'm sure. This is good, man. A dude like that, he said he wanted to get into real estate. He'll be flipping houses like a mad.
Him and Al Aquinta.
Yeah, him and Al Aquinta ought to have like an HGTV flip that house MMA edition.
That would be awesome.
They'd destroy.
On Paramount Network. That would be that'd be awesome. But I agree with you. I think this is a smart move. It's kind of like the whole Barry Sanders thing. Do you want to sit there and just take a beating for a few more years, knowing that you are at your peak? It's all downhill from here. I mean, because realistically, Henry Cejudo can't get much better than what he is right now. Because physically, we haven't seen anybody fighting as good as him right now at that weight class. So if you look for what a 125-pound man can do, what is his peak in martial arts? 1, win a gold medal. Check that off. 2, win a championship at your division in the UFC. He did that. Defend your title at least once in the UFC. He did that. Then move up a whole weight class. Not only win it, but also defend it. It's stuff that we have never seen any athlete do. He was the only guy to win a gold medal and win a UFC title. Check that off. He's one of 4 guys to win at multiple weight classes. Now he's the only guy. I think, is he the only guy, or is there? I think there's 2 others. I think maybe him and DC were the only guys to win and defend at that weight class.
I think so. Amanda Nunes hasn't defended the 40. Yeah, 145. Yeah,
so she has
45. Yeah, but not both belts. He's
right,
the first
simultaneously. Yes.
I was wrong. He actually got 5th at the 2012 Olympic trials. So, 2008 he wins. 2011 he took a long break. He didn't wrestle any tournaments from 2008 to 2011. Actually won the 2011 Sunkist Open. Then he went to the Henry Deglaine, got 2nd. His loss was to I'm not sure where that dude's from. But then you look, he beat a dude at the Sunkist Kids Open 1-0, and then that guy is actually the guy that put him out of the team trials. He actually forfeited to that guy. So that just, like I said, the dude's been on top of one sport and took an extended break, tried to come back, gets 5th at the trials 4 years later. So smart. Look, he won 2 belts, 2 different weight classes, defended both of them. The first guy to do that, I'm sure. He's got an Olympic gold medal. I think his overall wrestling record, it says this is his world level, is 38-12. He's got a ton of U.S. Open titles. The dude's he's built up enough of a resume that it'll be able to extend into a career anywhere he wants the rest of his life.
I thought the best part about the whole thing with Henry Cejudo retiring was in the foreground. You see Henry Cejudo, and he is announcing his his retirement. And then in the background, you see Uncle Dana standing back there, and his jaw is just hitting the ground.
He did not look very happy.
If you think about the history between these two, so Henry Cejudo is the man that saved the 125-pound division. So whenever he won the title from Mighty Mouse, they end up trading Mighty Mouse to ONE FC for Ben Askren, and Henry Cejudo is now this fresh face that we think is going to be the UFC champion. We don't know how long, though, because they're cutting everybody that's 125 pounds on the roster. What does he do? He takes his talents to 135, and he wins. Yeah. So now he's making it look like the 125-pound division is even better than what the 135-pound division is. So now Uncle Dana is forced to keep around a weight class that he didn't want to keep around in the first place. Now we fast forward. Guy doesn't even go back down to 125 to fight again. He just fights again at 135, then calls it quits. Now Dana's stuck with...
He did defend it. That was 25 against Dillashaw, remember?
Okay,
so
it was
he won
because
it from
Dillashaw
Mighty
went
Mouse.
down.
Dillashaw came down, and he defends it. And so now, I mean, Dana's like, you little son of a bitch. If you weren't 5'2" and a badass, I might kick your ass.
Yes. So it was basically the guy that made Dana keep all these guys around just because he was so good. And then now he's walking away just 3 fights after he had done all this. And it's just like Dana's just standing back there just out of all the things he couldn't have happen, I feel like that was the one thing he couldn't have happen on this night.
Yeah, nuts. Also, if you think about it, you know, Cruz, this has been so many years ago, Cruz beat the diggity dog shit out of Demetrius Johnson.
Oh, bad.
He sent Demetrius down to 25.
Yeah.
So you got the guy that sent Demetrius down to 25, and then that guy has 11 title defenses, basically puts that division in a freezer because he's so good. So you have the guy that puts him out of business.
Yes.
And then now you have this guy putting Cruz out of business.
Yes.
So now you got 30, like you said, you got 35 all screwed up, 25's all screwed up. Dana's back there itching his ass like, what in the hell's he doing? Cejudo's got a big smile doing his, and I did like his, you know, he said, I got me a nice girl. I'm at the top, and like he kind of does his cringy flex, and he's like, you know, he's back to his normal self. He's like, you guys don't have to listen to my goofiness anymore.
And it made it realistic.
Triple C,
like,
like,
everybody realized this was an act.
Yes,
you know.
I don't know if you caught it at the weigh-ins. He had Dominic Cruz pillows, big heads made, and he was like kicking them. I was cracking up at that, though.
No, it was absolutely good. I do think though that this is a blessing in disguise to the UFC, because now what they can do is just basically fast track a 125 title back out and fast track a 135 title back out. Now we have title fights in this quarantine of, you know, where we really don't have much sports to look at. We have headliners on 2 separate cards, and realistically you could just throw those 2 onto one card. Now we have a mega card because we have 2 titles exchanging hands, and they're going to be fresh faces for each one of those divisions.
Solves a lot of problems.
It solves a ton of problems.
You had Peter Yan and Aljamain Sterling sitting there, which they couldn't have. I think Aljamain said he's in New York, so like Manhattan is where he trains, so he couldn't have got, you know, and Peter Yan trains out of Tiger Muay. He lives in Russia, trains out of Thailand, so he couldn't have got in either. So Cruz was the best choice for this. In my opinion, Cruz should probably still be considered the best 35-pounder ever, even though Garbrandt beat him. We've seen what happened to Garbrandt after. You know, perfect scenario for Cejudo. Look, Cruz after 4 years looked amazing. He got caught. He got beat up. He didn't look slow. He didn't look out of it. You know,
no, he was in there.
He took a ton of leg kicks on those bad birdie legs he's got. He's right back in it. You know, give it to Yan, Aljamain, Cruz up next. You still got Garbrandt. You still got Pedro Munoz. That division's fine. 25, I'm in my head right now. I'm struggling to think of guys to throw in there.
No, my mind just keeps going back to Sergio Pettis. Like, that's like the only...
He doesn't even fight for the UFC anymore.
I know. He's in Bellator, isn't he? Or ONE FC?
We'll have to look it up. You know, it's something we'd have to look up another time. But yeah, I'm struggling to think of some 25-pounders to put in there right now.
But hey,
maybe this is the end of 25. I don't know.
It honestly might be the guy who saved it, put it to bed. It's one of those situations where, you know, I think it's Batman where they say...
Oh shit! What am I thinking? We just had Figueiredo and Joey Benavidez.
Oh, yeah.
We had that wacky fight because that's what Triple C said. He's the first champ to ever defend it from the couch because if Davison missed weight, then knocks out. So that's going to be the next 25-pound title. Will be those two are going to fight again. So it does solve some stuff. What were you saying about Batman?
I feel like Henry Cejudo is like the total, like him at the 125-pound division. You ever watch Batman where they say you either you die as the hero or you live long enough to be the enemy? Was it Joker who said that, or Two-Face?
Yeah, probably Joker.
One of those two guys. You live long. You either die the hero or you live long enough to be the villain. Henry Cejudo is basically Batman, 125-pound division. Saved it just to kill it, all within a matter of a year. So we had Tony Ferguson versus Justin Gaethje. You said that Justin Gaethje was basically as big as a lock as you could see one coming from a dog. And honestly, he proved everything right that you said. And we even, I even made the mention of, the thing is, whenever Tony Ferguson gets hurt in this fight, the difference between Justin Gaethje and everybody else is everybody else smells blood in the water, they're going to chase him down. Justin Gaethje did exactly what he needed to do. You touch him up, you get him hurt, then you don't pressure him a ton, you just let him come back, you hit him again, you hurt him again, and that was basically the MO of Justin Gaethje's night. What was your thoughts on this fight? I really feel bad for Tony Ferguson. I feel like he's one of the biggest sad tales in MMA history, where you have this guy who is the best fighter at his division, it wins 12 straight fights, basically just bludgeoning everybody, never actually has the real belt in his hands, even though I think he's more of a champion than Khabib is, in my opinion. It's a sad tale for Justin Gaethje, or for Tony Ferguson, but Justin Gaethje steals the night, absolutely dominates. What were your thoughts on this whole fight?
It went like we thought it was going to. The only problem is Tony never went down.
No.
I mean, he took more big shots than I can ever recall a guy taking. And towards the end, when they stopped it, no, he wasn't out, but I didn't want to see any more. I mean, I didn't want to see any more of the round before. We couldn't remember if it was the end of round 2 or the end of round 3, but you got to remember Ferguson dropped him. And
the biggest shot of the night, probably.
Because he didn't get knocked cold either. So he was in it the whole time. But he wasn't in it. I know that's weird to say. He was landing shots and he was looking good, but for every 5 he landed, Gaethje would hit 1 and just stop him dead in his tracks. A very great fight. I will always think of Ferguson as a champion. He was an interim. It's almost like Carlos Condit. Carlos Condit won an interim championship. But he then lost to GSP and never unified him. But he's still a champ. It just sometimes the time and circumstances don't. I mean, look at 170 right now. You got a guy that's a champ, and then you got 3 or 4 or 5 guys that could easily be champions if that guy wasn't around. Sometimes the time period that you're fighting in just doesn't allow it. And you look at the time period Tony is fighting in. You got Conor, Khabib. And Tony's been injured, Khabib's been injured. You got all these injuries and jails and all this wacky stuff. He never was able to unify the belts. Great fight. I thought it was a good stoppage. I know he wasn't all the way out. He took way more hard shots than I've ever seen him take. And then for Gaethje, he fought the perfect fight. I think Trevor Whitman's got him right now. I think if you put him back in those 2 fights that he lost in the UFC against Poirier, this guy right now.
Poirier? That's what I was watching.
Well, and he said it in between rounds. You remember, like he sat down and he was like, I forget what he said. It
was round 3. He said, "This fight's mine." He goes, "I'm gonna." Like,
did he say? He said something like, "Oh, like this is awesome!" Like just like as happy as a kid
it being
can be.
Over even.
And what does Coach Whitman say? He was like, he damn near slapped him. He was like, "Do not get too comfortable." What happened when you got too comfortable? And he's like, "I lost 2 times." You take, and I told
that was
you,
awesome, honestly.
Both those other 2 fights, I thought he was winning.
That was
those
like
guys
some
were
Rocky
almost
stuff,
stopped,
dude.
and then he's just one of these guys. Look, there's some madmen out there that they love being in a fist fight more than you love pizza and sex. Which is hard to think, but Justin Gaethje's one of those dudes. He just fought perfect. He fought absolutely perfect. Now we got to see what's going to happen because I don't know how the Khabib leaving Russia is. I don't know where Fight Island is. I don't know if Gaethje will be able to leave the continental United States to go to the island, because that's what they're setting up the island for, is for international fighters. So I don't really know what happens next. It's, again, this freaking 155-pound division, I feel like for the last 3 years, we're just kind of like, it's going to be wacky. Who knows what's going to happen? So.
Yeah. No, it's been absolutely crazy. I feel like we have to have a fight with Khabib and Tony, even if it isn't a title fight. Like, I don't know in what situation we're going to end up here, because there's a million things that can happen. You could have Gaethje fight Conor. You could have Gaethje fight, Khabib. You could have Tony. You can't necessarily put Tony back up against Khabib, because Khabib holds the belt. You'd almost have to strip Khabib at this point in order to make Tony and Khabib happen. So I don't know which route this is going to go. I just think that it's going to be wacky. You basically got to strap up, because of all the times where we finally have a clear path for to unify these belts, it's not going to be there because the travel bans. So it's going to get really, really weird.
It might be weirder than ever. As weird as this class has been, this might be the weirdest time period for it.
Yes, I didn't think it could possibly get any weirder than probably 3 years ago, where you had the Conor, Khabib, and Tony, none of them really losing any fights and just winning. So I honestly don't know where we go from here with this division. I feel like Gaethje and Khabib has to be the next fight. I feel like Gaethje beats him.
I would pick Gaethje at this point.
I feel like Gaethje.
I've seen you make fun of Skip Bayless talking about, or was that Colin? He called him...
no, it was Skip Bayless. He kept calling him Khabib. Yeah, Skip Bayless kept referring to Khabib Nurmagomedov as Khabib.
Yeah.
And it was purposely spelled with a D 3 different times. And he even doubled down and made another tweet. He referred to him as Khabib, and then referred to him again as Khabib in the same tweet, and then comes back with another tweet and was like, Khabib. And he said, I picked Gaethje to win that fight as long as Khabib doesn't get it to the ground. And it's like, dude, you have no idea what you're talking about. Justin Gaethje didn't wrestle at all. He has a higher wrestling pedigree than any guy in the division.
I don't disagree with him, though. I don't think Khabib's going to try and stand. I think he's going to go full double leg from 30 feet away. Now, you got to think that Gaethje's got the wrestling prowess to stop a blind shot like that.
Oh, my goodness, yes.
I would pick Gaethje. That'll be a Gaethje pick for sure. But
Khabib had tough times taking Conor down.
Yeah,
and dude, Justin Gaethje is a Division I All-American.
Even the best wrestler in Ireland doesn't probably make a college wrestling team.
No,
maybe not even a high school. So, it's going to be wild times.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull this up with Khabib. Who's the guy with the highest wrestling pedigree he's ever fought?
Probably a Bale Trejo. He was he's a bad dude. He just
and even dude, Alaquenta was kind of touching him up towards the end. It was hard for him to take him down towards the end of that fight.
Also, you got Gleason Tibau, which a lot of think Gleason actually won that fight. And he was a Brazilian state champion in Brazil at wrestling. So, highest pedigree is college.
We're talking about
JUCO participant.
Yes.
Wrestling is probably.
Really, that's what we're looking at.
Which is probably about the equivalent of anybody can wrestle JUCO wrestling, right?
Yeah.
Now there's a difference in a John Jones JUCO national champ and teams like that. Yeah, you could really. I wasn't that good in high school. I probably could have went to a JUCO.
Oh, 100%.
I wasn't going to go to Iowa Central and wrestle, but I could have made the team on some JUCO. So I would say Gaethje for sure is by far the highest pedigree that he will face,
and the hardest puncher.
And that's the big thing. And
in my opinion, maybe the smartest fighter.
Yeah, so far.
It's just. If that fight happened tomorrow, I would feel 100% confident telling everybody and their brother, pick Justin Gaethje.
Yeah.
He will. I think he's going to starch Khabib.
I don't disagree.
I think he's going to starch him. All right. So any other rounds up? Got to give a shout out to Thug Nasty, dude. Thug Nasty absolutely
killed it.
I've never seen a guy get as dominated as what Thug Nasty did.
What was the
Charles
scorecard? You were saying there was something insane, right?
30-24, 30-25, 30-25. After that fight, I looked across the room and I go, that has to be 30-24, right? I said, that guy did not land a single punch. That guy got absolutely murdered for 3 straight rounds. I've never seen a guy just get physically dominated more than what Charles Rosa did, especially coming in saying, I'm going to finish him with an armbar. Dude, you got put in the twister position 3 separate rounds. Like, it was just absolute dominance. And I feel like Bryce Mitchell had, like, 6 different submissions locked up, just never ended up finishing him. I don't know how he survived.
Did he earn those camo shorts?
Yeah, they actually said that he's getting camo shorts now.
He put on Twitter, he was like, Reebok's getting them. There was another company that put out some Thug Nasty gear. I might buy a shirt from him or something, but yesterday he's like, Reebok is getting me my gear, but don't forget this guy who's been with me from the beginning, and it was a smaller company that put out some gear. But dude's earned his camo shorts.
You know, my favorite thing about Bryce Mitchell, though, in this fight is every single round ended with that guy flat on his back, Bryce Mitchell just absolutely blunging him.
Cook him to the bone.
Cooked him to the bone.
Cook him to the bone.
The best part of that whole thing is a lot of people will be like, oh, he just absolutely dominated with his wrestling, and you look and he's got like 50 takedown attempts. Bryce Mitchell had 3 takedown attempts. 3 takedown attempts.
One each round.
Ended every single round on top. Do you know how many strikes Charles Rosa landed in this fight?
This is one of the ones I didn't see this when I was hanging out having some beers at where there was no TV. I was just hanging out.
Okay.
And so when I got there, I was like, "Hey, did they win?" You guys were telling me about it. But if Thug Nasty got 1 takedown a round and ended every round on top, I'm gonna guess this guy landed less than 20 punches.
12. 5 significant strikes. He threw 10 significant strikes in this fight.
Probably from his back.
Yo, they all had to have been. Because, dude, I've never seen a guy get completely dominated like that. Like, people always want to say, oh, that was just such a dominant fashion of beating somebody. And you look, and it's like, well, he had 6 takedowns. Like, the guy got back up every single round. The dude got on his back and could not physically get up. I'm saying you sell your Bryce Mitchell stocks high right now because there's no way he can continue to do it that dominant.
You know, Rosa's he's not a walk in the park. You know, he's not a walk in the park. Thug Nasty's ready for a big name. Give him a big name.
I absolutely agree. All right, biggest winners of this weekend. Just rattle off the biggest ones that you can think of.
I've got 2. Justin Gaethje, Thug Nasty.
I absolutely agree. I think those 2 are the biggest winners. I think maybe the biggest winner, I would almost give the nod to Henry Cejudo, being able to do what he did and then be able to retire in a spot where you feel 100% confident.
The life winner, it's got to go to Cejudo.
Yes, winner Cejudo.
Just overall, the rest of his life is going to be better off for it as Cejudo.
Yeah, I thought Nico Price kind of got the raw deal there because he was in that fight with Vincent Lukoy, ends up getting hit with 1 shot to the eye in the 3rd round in a fight that you could make an argument that he was winning. And
I seen a picture he posted yesterday. His eye had stitches, I think, on bottom and top, and it was closed up still.
Yeah, I think he had 3 separate spots where he had stitches on just one eye.
And that fight we said was going to be 50-50, just bananas. So, and that's how it turned out to be.
That's exactly how it turned out. I'm going to pull up the strikes in that fight because it was just absolutely bananas just for our own purposes here. Okay, are you ready? So this fight got cut short, so it wasn't a full 3-round fight. And in my opinion, I thought Nico Price was winning the fight. He actually had more takedowns and more strikes prior to getting knocked down in the 3rd there. There was 544 punches thrown in those rounds.
How many?
544.
Jesus.
In a 3-round fight. Yep. I really thought Nico Price was winning that fight at the time of the stoppage, but damage does take its toll. So Vincent Lukoy did win. Overall, I thought that was one of the funnest fights of the night. 544 strikes thrown in 13 and a half minutes. So, kind of crazy. So, we do actually have fights all this week. We have fights on Wednesday. We have fights on Saturday. Mr. Shackelford has vowed that he will break down the main cards for both. There's actually a lot more fights than just these main cards. They all both have their prelim cards. The prelim cards are loaded to the gills. Sake of time, he's just going to give you the top 5 fights here we're going to break down. I think even Andrei
This will be
Arlovsky,
the lightning rounds. Here.
Yes, Andrei Arlovsky's in there on the prelims. You have
Michael Johnson.
Yeah, Michael Johnson. I think Mickey Gall, he's on there for betting odds, but I didn't see his fight actually listed for the UFC, so I don't know if he's necessarily fighting or not.
I don't know.
Darren Elkin, The Damage, he's an all-time guy to watch. But we're going to start it off first. UFC Fight Night this Wednesday. We'll start it off at the top here. Lightweight fight, light heavyweight fight. We have Anthony Smith taking on Glover Teixeira. Smith is 7-2 in his last 9 fights, 7 finishes, only losses to John Jones and the guy that we thought beat John Jones, Thiago Santos. He is a minus 175 favorite to Glover Teixeira, who's a plus 145 dog, coming in with 3 wins. Mr. Shackelford, what's the pick?
I am going to go Anthony Smith. This is tough. Glover, you remember, is on a 3-fight winning streak. He's beaten 3 young guns. He finally remembered this is MMA and not just rock'em sock'em robots. He's getting takedowns. He's getting this submission game on. The reason I'm going with Smith, he's bigger, he's longer, he hits hard. I think Glover's going to have a hard time taking him down. Glover, although is an amazing submission artist and a very good wrestler, he doesn't have that John Jones wrestling pedigree, which is what gets Anthony Smith down and kept him down. So going Anthony Smith. I love that fight. Between these 2 cards, I like the Wednesday card better. Just more guys that I just in particular like to watch are on that one. That one's going to be a fun main event. I'm going Anthony Smith. I'm going to go TKO round 2.
Yeah, I think Smith wins, and I do think he's actually going to finish Glover Teixeira, which breaks my heart because I love both of these fighters.
You can't not love either guy.
Yes, both of these guys are just way too close to the heart here. Next up, we have a heavyweight matchup. This is my guy, Ben Rothwell, baby.
Big Ben, baby.
Yeah, I absolutely love Ben Rothwell. Since he's been back, he's only had 3 fights since 2016. He's 1-2 in those 3 fights. The only win he has is that super weird win against Steven Struve. I think he kept kicking him in the beanbag.
Yeah, kicked him in the ball
like 3 times. And he's going to be taking on OSP, 6-6 in his last 12 fights. This is his first fight at heavyweight. OSP opens as a minus 150 favorite to Ben Rothwell, who is a plus 120 dog. Mr. Shackelford, what's the pick?
You know, this is a no-win situation. Do not bet on this fight.
No.
These guys are as Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde as you can possibly get. I'm going to go Ben Rothwell. This is OSP's first time up at heavyweight. He's had a very tough streak of fights. I think he's, out of his last 7 fights, he's 2-5. He's bumping up a weight class against Big Ben, who's like 1-4 in his last ones.
Yes.
I think Big Ben mushes him against the fence. I don't know who to pick. Don't bet on this one. I'm telling you right now, don't bet on him. I'm picking Big Ben because he's a heavyweight. OSP is a guy that can make 205. Big Ben ain't ever making 205.
No, Big Ben ain't ever making 205. I think whenever we get these guys like side by side, though, I think this is going to be one of those weird fights where we see them matched up and we're going to like be visually drawn towards OSP, because I think it's going to be one of those weird situations where it's like, hey man, are you fighting heavyweight because basically every gym in America is closed and you just happen to be 30 pounds overweight today, which Ben Rothwell doesn't show any signs of having any good cardio. Like, I think it was 2 fights ago, or his comeback fight, we picked him, and basically we thought it was going to be a Dada versus Kimbo situation where both guys died in the cage.
Was that him versus Orlovsky?
Yes, it was.
Where Orlovsky beat him like a drum for the first couple rounds, and then, like, basically he just beat Rothwell's head in so bad he got tired, and then Rothwell started coming back, and then by the end they're just basically like doing a St. Louis arch type. They're just, the only thing holding him up is each other.
It was basically like if your heavy bag could hit back only after you beat it for 20 minutes. So whenever you're like, can't raise your arms anymore, you're like, man, I just beat the shit out of that bag. Now that bag starts fighting back. That was Ben Rothwell in that fight. So I don't even know where to pick this fight. I don't know anything about what this fight's going to look like, who's going to come in looking good. Ben Rothwell hasn't looked good. OSP's looked, he's 50-50. Yeah. My gut would say almost just be like OSP, because I think he'll be, if this fight drags on at all, I think Ben Rothwell is going to die in the cage, basically. All right, next
Lord
fight.
help us.
We have a lightweight matchup. We have this fight's actually like sneaky good.
This is like mirror image of each other.
Yes, I think this. If you put a ranking order of what fights I think could be the best this whole entire week, with all 24 fights or however many fights there are this week, I think this would probably be my first or second favorite fight. We have Alexander Hernandez coming in as a -105 dog. He's 9-1 in his last 10 fights. Only loss has been to Cowboy. Whenever Cowboy turned back the clock and looked great. Taking on Drew Dober, who is a -125 favorite. He's 5-1 in his last 6. Only loss has been to Beneil Dariush. Drew Dober's been a guy that we've picked a lot lately. We've really liked what he's been showing. He's one of the hotter guys in this division as far as, who's been beating who lately. This is an awesome fight. I cannot underline that enough. Who do you like here?
I'm going to go Drew Dober. I think these guys are mirror images of each other. Dober's just a little older. I think he's got just a touch more experience. The big thing is I think he's got a better team. He's got one of the best teams, the Elevation Fight team. I think that if you are in a camp that can give you, especially this weekend, this isn't knocking anybody in Tony Ferguson's camp, but you had Trevor Whitman, one of the masters of the game, giving detailed, precise instructions, both motivationally and technically to his fighter. And then in Tony's corner, one round, they brought out the stool. Tony didn't want it. Next round, they didn't bring the stool. He called for it. A cut man didn't go out one time. Fourth round, whenever he was starting to get brutalized, you had Eddie Bravo comes in. Like one round, the striking guy comes in. Next round, Bravo comes in. He's like, hey, you maybe need to throw an Imanari. I love Eddie Bravo, none of those guys. And I only know this from all the years of watching coaching and just being around coaching, that you've got to give precise, short instructions. You've got to get your point across. Now, every athlete's different, but I think in times like this, especially, it's going to be a quiet arena. I think it's the guys that are going to do the best in the situation, the guys with the better cardio, and the guys that have more seasoned instructors that are like, hey, dude, this like Greg Jackson right now, if you had $1 million, you'd want Greg Jackson in your corner every time, because I think he's the king of kings when it comes to that. So these guys are mirror images. They can both strike. They're both dynamic. They can both take downs. I'm going to go Drew Dober, probably decision.
Okay, I actually really like that breakdown from that perspective, talking about the coaching there, because one of the things that a lot of the fighters in the post-fight interviews were saying was that I liked fighting this way. This was my favorite way to fight without the fans, because you can actually hear your coach's instruction. You can hear not only your coach, but you can also hear the other coach as well, which Doug Nasty, he had talked about that. I think it was Ryan Spann, he had talked about that.
Greg Hardy even said in the fight, he heard DC say, oh, he's not checking leg kicks, and he said, I tried to learn how to check leg kicks midway through the fight, and that's when the fight turned. All of a sudden, he's not getting hit with leg kicks. He's moving a little bit. That's a big factor. Right now, I think the guys that are going to do best are going to be the guys who have naturally better cardio and just have a corner that they can just, here's this, and this, and can work on it.
Yes, and honestly, the only fight we've seen Alexander Hernandez lose, it's one of the more like technical fighters.
Exactly.
So I actually really love the Drew Dober pick there. And honestly, right now, that fight's basically a pick-em. So you're getting 50-50 odds there.
I think from here, aside from the Anthony Smith, this top card, it's 50-50. They're all pick-ems.
Yep. No, these are great fights, honestly. Next up, we have Ricky Simon. He came into the UFC, this big-time prospect. He's running this 15-1 record, gets knocked out by Faber, loses his last fight to Rob Font. So even though he's fighting on a 2-fight losing streak, this is a guy who started his MMA career 15-1. He's taking on Ray Borg. He's only had 3 fights since 2017. He's 2-1 in those fights. A lot of stuff working against Ray Borg over the last few years, which has kept him pretty inactive. Simon is a -165 favorite to Borg, who's a +135 dog. Ricky Simon, he has one of the best mullets in the game, though. So
I'm going against the mullet. I'm
Okay.
going for the dog. We're going Ray Borg. He's had a couple contentious split decisions. This fight's going to be Ray Borg shooting 100 takedowns and being a backpack on Simon. If I remember correctly, I want to say Ricky Simone looked very hesitant in that Rob Font fight.
It was because I remember.
I think we picked him.
We did.
And then, because Font's another of those off and on guys, and I just remember thinking like, oh man, I think maybe that knockout changed him.
It really did, because whenever he was coming in and he was fighting Faber, we're like, dude, this is a lock. This guy's a wild man. He's fun to watch. He's super explosive. And he makes the fights fun. His last fight following the Faber knockout, he didn't do that. He was very hesitant. I do really like that pick. So there you go. There's another dog. You got 2 dogs so far. Next up, we have Carl Roberson. He's 3-2 in his last 5 fights, taking on one of my favorite fighters at this weight class, Marvin Vettori. Marvin Vettori has only had 1 loss since 2016. It was that split decision against Adesanya. What are your thoughts on this fight? I think this is actually going to be a really good fight.
It's going to be a banger. Robertson's a big, strong puncher.
Yes.
I am going to go Vettori. I think under Rafael Cordero, the old shoot-to-boxer guy, I think his stand-up's technical enough. He'll be able to avoid those big bombs. Should be a fun fight. The big bombs are there. You can't get hit by Roberson, but I think Vettori is swift enough to get in and out and be okay.
Now, is he from France? Or is he
Italian?
He's Italian. That's what it is.
He's like one of the lone
one of the only Italian fighters. Because whenever he first came up, we were very hesitant, actually, because there were no guys in the UFC.
I can only think of 3 Italian fighters. You got Vettori, you got Luigi Fivoranti, which he trains in St. Louis sometimes. My jiu-jitsu coach has actually trained with him a little. And then the last one is... Man, I'm forgetting his name, but he was the first dude to come out with like the what I call the gladiator style tattoos, with like that gladiator like Caesar looking tattoo. I can't remember his name, but he was a badass 2-bag name. But those are the only 3 Italian fighters I can ever remember.
No, I love Marvin Vettori. He's a very good fighter. I do think that he picks up this win, and all these odds are so close that even just picking the favorite is not going to hurt you in these fights.
No.
Just to rattle off just a little bit here, to kind of run through the prelims, just to let everybody know what they're working with this week. You have Andrei Arlovsky on the prelims, Michael Johnson, Thiago Moises, Sahari Eubanks, Brian Keller, Chase Sherman. So you do have some names there to finish out the card there.
Alessio Sakura. Alessio Sakura.
Is that the one you were forgetting? Okay. But all in all, Wednesday should be loaded down with good fights.
For me, I like the Wednesday card better than the Saturday card. Saturday card's fun as hell too, but
I think Michael Johnson tips the scales for me, honestly.
On Saturday?
I love Michael Johnson. No, he's on Wednesday.
Oh, he is on Wednesday.
He's on Wednesday.
Yeah, well, there's a bunch of fun guys on there. A bunch of fun guys on Saturday. 2 in 1 week. I don't care if you got Joe Blow fighting.
Yeah, no, we're absolutely loaded down here. All right, so next up, let's go ahead and get to UFC Fight Night. It's Overeem versus Harris. I think all these fights are taking place in the same building. After we get done here, I need you to run through to kind of talk about the precautions that they had taken after the fights to get fighters into the building, because I thought that was honestly pretty cool. But this Saturday, the headliner is Alistair Overeem taking on Walt Harris. We have Overeem, who's 4-3, basically. He's back and forth since 2016. Basically, gets knocked out or knocks people out. Taking on Walt Harris, who's 3-0-1 in his last 3 fights. 3 knockouts there. Walt Harris is a -170 favorite to Overeem, who is the +140 dog. What do we like in this fight?
Walt Harris, if you don't remember his
oh yeah, no,
he's had a terrible, and they actually showed they're doing a little like Road to Redemption story sometime this week. It damn near had me crying at the fights. I think he's got a lot to fight for this week. He's a big puncher. He's a solid wrestler. I just feel like I can't pick against him. I think in this spot in his life, this is one of those moments that a guy like that, he's going to win this fight. I can't tell you why. I just cannot pick against him.
No, I agree. But the thing is if this fight would have basically happened, if we would have been talking about this fight like a year ago, prior to all these situations, I really think Alistair Overeem wins this fight.
Well, and that's before Biggie Boy caught him. You know, Alistair's always been a guy who's a very good striker, but he can get knocked down. He's had more KOs and TKOs in MMA than any other fighter, I believe. The big, Walt Harris, I almost call him Will Harris. Walt Harris is a guy that 2 years ago, he had a big punch, but he wasn't a striker. He wasn't that clean. Now you've given him some time. He's younger, he's bigger, he's faster, he's stronger. I think he's going to get a TKO win.
One big thing here with Alistair Overeem, kickboxing record. He was 10-7, or no, he was 10-4. He had the 4 losses. 3 by knockout, and then you look at his MMA record, he's had 18 losses, 14 by knockout. So the route to victory is him getting knocked out.
He almost always gets KO'd.
Yeah. I do really like that pick with Walt Harris there, though. I think that's one of those ones that come Saturday, though. If you sit on this for a while, I think Alistair Overeem will actually kind of creep up and become.
Yeah.
I think he'll creep up and be close to the favorite, if not the favorite, just due to the names, due to people who don't know MMA betting on these cards.
Yep.
Next up, we have Claudia Gadelha. She's only had 1 fight since 2018. She's a minus 200 favorite to Angela Hill, who is a plus 160 dog. Seems like every weekend Angela Hill was fighting prior to this,
She
pandemic.
became the female cowboy.
The female
She's
cowboy.
the cowgirl, baby.
Yeah, she's had 6 fights now since 2019 started. Been one of the most active fighters in MMA. What are your thoughts on this fight? I was actually surprised by the odds here.
I was too. I'm going to go Angela Hill. Her striking's a lot cleaner. She's gotten much better at defending takedowns, which is her big problem, is getting taken down or getting mushed against the fence and letting them dictate. She's really became more able to dictate the better her stand-up's gotten, and with the quick turnaround, I like Angela Hill a lot here. That's a beautiful dog right there.
Yeah, and I think if you really look at it, Angela Hill doesn't have the greatest record in the world, but if you think about fighters that have actually progressed over the last probably year and a half, I would say not just female fighters, but fighters across the UFC alone. I think that she is one of the most improved fighters.
She did Rogan's
on the whole
podcast,
roster.
And he asked her how long she'd been fighting, and I think she went from college art student to professional MMA fighter in like a 3-year span, 3-year span. She just was getting chubby, walked in off the streets, started doing Muay Thai. Next thing you know, she's fighting at Muay Thai, amateur, and then next thing you know, she's on the Ultimate Fighter. So now we're in that 6-7 year mark where if you started wrestling when you were 13, you're really gonna start figuring things out in 4 or 5 years if you're not a level athlete.
Right.
So that's I think really attribute that to her sudden just takeoff, just from like you're one thing and then the next fight you're the next thing. It just starts clicking in your head.
Yes.
So.
Plus, she has a very good Apollo Creed impersonation.
Oh, dude, she's the best on. She
best
draws.
on Twitter.
I've been doing these doodles and putting them up. She told me I did a good doodle. She did one, and I commented on it. She asked me to see mine. I showed her. She's like, "Hey, that's not bad." We saw her in St. Louis. She came out to the Misfits Skulls, which is an all-time come-out song. I really like her, but I would pick her technically wise for this also.
Yes, I do think that she wins this fight. I was just, out of all the odds this weekend, this is actually the biggest favorite underdog that we're going to break down here.
No kidding, that surprised me a lot.
It was eye-opening whenever I saw that. All right, next up we have Dan Ige. Is that his name?
Yep.
I always mess his name up. I feel like we've broken down 10 of his fights, and I either call him Ige or Ige. He's taking on Edson Barboza. Ige's coming in on 5 straight wins. He's a plus 105 dog to Edson Barboza, who's a minus 135 favorite. I basically put in here because I was wanting to run through everybody, how they've done over their last few fights, just to give you a feeler there. I just put on Edson Barboza, look up. Because realistically, this guy has fought the gauntlet of fighters. I'm going to read through his last 10 fights. You have Paul Felder, Justin Gaethje, Dan Hooker, Kevin Lee, Khabib Nurmagomedov, Beneil Dariush, Gilbert Melendez, Anthony Pettis, Tony Ferguson, Paul Felder, Michael Johnson, Bobby Green, Evan Dunham, Cowboy Cerrone. Those were his last
guy
few
he
fights.
Hasn't fought.
Exactly. I mean, this is
one
loaded.
thing you may not know. This is at 145.
This is at 145?
He's dropping down.
I did not realize that.
This is his first fight at 145. I am going to pick Barboza because of what you just said. He has been in every fight for his entire career. Really, the only really great 55-pounder he hasn't fought is Conor.
Yeah.
Ige is a very tough fighter. You've won some money off him, I know, because he's been a dog in a lot of fights. Not that bodied up. He's got cardio for days. Hits like a ton of bricks. I think the Barboza is going to be too big, too fast, too strong, too experienced. What worries me though is how shredded Barboza is at 55.
At 55, yes.
This is 10 more pounds. Ige is one of those guys that looks a little softish compared to guys like Barboza, but I don't think he's cutting the weight, which we've seen a million times is usually a good thing. The weight scares me more than anything.
3-round fight, though.
Kind of eyeball how the scales look. If they even show this, even if they do scales to any amount of public this time after what happened last time. I am going to go Barboza, though, by decision.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It's just one of those things, man. This guy has been put through the absolute ringer. Like, if you ranked the names on this list, Dan Ige is probably the third smallest name behind Evan Dunham and Bobby Green.
Yep. And at the time, those guys were big.
Big time.
Those guys were big
time. And you could really just drop those names off and stop it at Michael Johnson. His last 12 fights were spectacular.
Yep, exactly.
So I do think that Edson Barboza, I think this is one of his, I hate to say it's his easiest challenge in his last 14 fights, but it very well could be.
Name-wise, it for sure is. Now, yes. I don't know if it will be because dude's tough.
Yeah, I'm very excited about that fight. I think that's going to be kind of the sneaky fight with Drew Dober and Alexander Hernandez. That's going to be the sneaky fight, in my opinion, for the Saturday card. All right, next up we have Eric Anders, former Alabama football player, coming in back-to-back wins. He's taking on Christoph Jotko,
yeah.
Christoph Jotko, who's also coming in on back-to-back wins. Jotko is a minus 165 favorite to Eric Anders, who's a plus 135 dog. Mr. Shackelford, what's the pick?
I'm going to go Anders. I like you, boy. I think that's a nice one there.
Yeah, I do too.
Jocko's tough. Jocko's a tough dude, but I think Anders is going to get him.
Yeah, I do too. I like that as a dog pick there, especially those big punchers like that. So next up, we have Song Yadong, who is a minus 200 favorite over Marlon Vera, who's a plus 160 dog. Song Yadong coming in, he had a 7-fight win streak before he lost to Cody Stamann in his last fight, where you have Marlon Vera, who's coming in on a 5-fight win streak himself. What's the pick?
I'm going to go Cheeto Vera.
I was surprised that this was plus 160 to minus 200.
Yeah, Yadong's tough dude. Vera's on the next level. Vera's hunting for a title. He's a guy that's had a few opportunities to fight some big names, but for whatever reason, they dropped out or they got hurt or whatever, so he keeps fighting these. Cheeto's at another level, I feel, than a lot of these guys. He just hasn't got the chance to prove it.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. Let me pop up the remainder of this card real quick, and we'll kind of give you guys an idea of what you're working with.
You got Kevin Holland, who's off the Contender Series. Matt Brown is way down there.
Yeah, Matt Brown. I was really excited to see him.
Like you said, Darren Elkins, and then you got Courtney Casey, that Romero Barella's in there. Yeah, there's some fun fights all up and down these cards, man.
Yeah,
there's a lot of fighters right now that are sitting at home not earning money that are just dreaming about getting a fight.
Yeah, I am very excited.
And they're showing up. They're showing up to Jacksonville, baby.
So anything else with these two cards? Before we move on to what they did to kind of keep everybody safe last weekend.
They're going to be fun. They're going to be free. Eyeball them.
Yes, I agree. So you kind of gave me a rundown last weekend of what they did to keep the people safe. kind of give us a rundown? I thought it was absolutely hilarious how there's only like 2 fighters in a general vicinity, only at the time of the fight.
So, it kind of blew up there Friday night. The Jacare tested positive for corona, and people are going bananas. There's some MD that's trying to make a name for something who's just going bananas, and all those bloody elbow staff who are like super anti-Dana are just retweeting all of his shit. The dude, I asked him a question, he answered me back in like 30 seconds, and then I asked him a follow-up. He never answered me back because he's wrong in the situation. Jacare drove from Orlando to Jacksonville. He had a family member that he had came in contact with that tested positive. He hadn't tested positive. He was showing no symptoms. No reason to cancel. That's drove down, him and his 2 partners, got there, told him, he self-reported, hey, they're probably doing some kind of questionnaire. Yes, bam. They isolated him, took a test, did his stuff. You could see in the weigh-ins, he's got an N95 and gloves on. His team does too.
He's better prepared than 90% of hospitals.
Yes. He tests positive. The stare down there, everybody's like, oh, well, he fist bumped Dana. He was wearing gloves, A. He had a mask on, B. A fist bump is not going to contract it. I'm telling you. Unless you're coughing onto your hand and then fist bumping, maybe. I don't know. They found out he had it, fight was off. I don't see how you get better than that. They said they did over 1,200 tests before the fights. This is before. I'm sure they did more after. 1,200 tests, they had 3 positives.
Yeah, and they all came from the same camp.
And they all came from the
same car that drove them over.
The same car that drove them over.
Yes.
You don't get better than that. As far as the stuff to do it, so fight night, they said what they were doing is they had 2 guys fighting. They had their cornermen. They had the judges sat back. They had the ring guys on 3 different spots. 2 guys fighting when they had 2 guys warming up at the hotel, which was a mile away. As soon as that fight was done, they brought the other guys from the hotel. The other guys left. The guys in the cars came in, fought, and that's how it went all night. I think that's why they were doing those promo packages, like on some of the fights that got KOs or whatever, where you didn't get the promos in between some of the ones that went the distance because they didn't need that time. You get a second round KO, that's 5 minutes extra you got to cut out there.
Right.
So, these people that are going crazy online, they don't really know all the stuff that's going on behind the scenes. But even the stuff they're putting out, the question I asked that doctor dude was, is this really, look at food service, look at hospitals, are these procedures out of the line widely off compared to what the UFC's doing? And he didn't answer, because the answer is no. These are probably far better than you right now listening to this going to Walmart trying to pick up something.
Yes, no, I agree.
So I don't feel, and that's the thing that pisses me off. You got people online, they're like, you should feel guilty for watching this. You're killing people. No, cut it out.
No, I agree. And people can't sit there and say like, oh, they need to be tested before they come to the facility. It's like, well, then that's really not that. You can't really do that. It's
not that easy to get a test.
Exactly, because you're already doing 1,200 tests. Now you're going to have to do 2,400 tests before people travel, and then you have to test them again after they travel, because then their chances of getting in contact with somebody just goes up a little bit.
Even an asymptomatic person trying to go to the doctor to get a test, they're not going to test you if you don't have symptoms.
Right.
Even if you've been in contact with someone with COVID, I mean, they're probably just going to be like, look, okay, you're not having symptoms, you probably don't have it, just quarantine for 14 days. So for a lot of people are bitching about, well, why did Jacare even come? Some of them are saying, well, he flew from Brazil. Think of all those people. He didn't. He drove probably 2 hours from Orlando to Jacksonville in a car. He was asymptomatic. That means he had no symptoms. There's no reason to think he, shouldn't have been showing up. But guess what he did? He got tested. Fight got canceled. I don't know what the people that are complaining have no clue what they're talking about.
They're
getting online. Agree. They're looking at all these left-wing it turns into a my team's better than your team. I'm going to go with my team no matter what is actually happening. Bullshit. Pisses me off. One dude told me I looked like a child molester on Twitter. I just said, hey, touche, but you're still wrong.
You're still wrong.
I mean, I tried to explain to him, like, look, if you came in contact with someone with crabs, don't mean you're going to get crabs.
That's how somebody knows they're wrong.
They just immediately like, oh, he probably went to my account, saw my awesome mustache, called me a dirty word. Then, I said, I said, it would be like you come in contact with someone with crabs, but you don't get crabs. It's possible. And I said, but word on the street is you got crabs. Then he called me that. And then he got into a fight with some other dude, and they're just like, bam, 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 and I'm just like, it's funny to make fun of these people that don't know a clue about what they're talking about.
So the real early prelims were on Mr. Shackelford's
and it wasn't even me. I just told the dude he had crabs, and next thing you know, him and some other dude are fist fighting. So,
oh well,
insanity, man. It's people. I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. When this all started, I understand the caution. I was for the caution, but at some point people have to go back to work, whether it's fighting, whether it's working at McDonald's, Walmart, hospitals. We got to get back to normalcy, and that's not a right-wing, left-wing statement, so I hope they don't bounce us for this. This isn't Alex Jones. This isn't conspiracy. This is take your health into your own hands. Wear masks, wear gloves if you want. Be safe, be as safe as you want, but God dang it, don't be calling people child molesters on Twitter just because you're an idiot.
Because they disagreed with you.
Yeah.
All right, so there's 10 picks. Looks like we got a handful of favorites there. I'm very excited for this weekend's card. So, guys, anything else that we need to discuss? Mr. Shackelford, you've been watching anything good? Latency, you've been watching anything good? Anything to talk about before we wrap this show up?
My entire life I've been in school for the past week and a half, so nothing new in my life.
I'm almost there, baby. I've been working on The Sopranos still. There is a new Hulu show from one of the makers of Rick and Morty. I can't think of the name of it right now. It's pretty good. Dave just got renewed for a second season. If you haven't seen Dave, you need to watch Dave. Solar Opposites is the new one that looks really good. One thing that I can report, my daughter, 12-year-old, we've been busting in some of my older movies. That's kind of where a lot of our stuff comes from. Finally let her watch Billy Madison the other day. Two things happened. We laughed our asses off, but I also think now she knows that I'm not as smart as I've always pretended. That all my lines that I say, like when someone's complaining at me and I say, "Don't tell me my business, devil woman," that's not original. That's from Billy Madison.
See, this is your problem. You shouldn't let her watch any Sandler movies. No Sandman movies. No Seagal movies. Yeah, that way she doesn't know any of your tricks.
She just thinks I'm like the sharpest dude on earth. The other one, if she's really pissing me off or something, and I'll be like, is everybody ready? Good, great, grand, wonderful. It's Chris Farley when they're all getting on the bus. We laughed our asses off at Billy Madison.
Yeah, I'll never forget the first time I watched Billy Madison. Was Steve Buscemi the guy who he called and apologized to and then shot the arrow?
Man, am I glad I called that guy.
I remember when he said that, I laughed uncontrollably.
Yeah.
I was by myself in my watching that movie for the first time ever. Middle of the day, probably a freaking Saturday or something. Just lost it.
He calls him. He's got the lipstick. He marks the to kill, the name off the to kill list. Yeah. The other thing that's funny is every time we watch one of those, she goes, "Oh, hey, that's Crazy Eyes," or "Oh, hey, that's that guy." And I've told her a million times, like in most Sandler movies, he's got like the same 10 guys playing different parts. She still hasn't caught on to it yet. She's like, "Is that the one guy from that?" And I'm like, "Yes, I've told you." So.
Billy Madison, I actually used a Billy Madison line the other day. John Jones was like tweeting at a fan like he always does. He was mad. He was like, "Everybody's just mad because I get to do all the cool stuff," or something like that. And then I replied to him and I said, if driving while intoxicated is cool, you're Miles Davis. And it had the little old lady there.
That part, my daughter did just start dying laughing whenever that happened. So
yeah,
that's an all-timer line right there.
Yeah.
All-timer. If you can hit someone with that, you've won the day.
Oh, yeah. No, that was a day well won. Yeah, I think the only thing's new with me, I haven't watched any movies actually this week. The only thing I've done, I got a grill.
You've been grilling like a son of a bitch. You ain't got time to watch TV now.
Grill.
I'm officially an old man now. All I do is just live for the weekend. That way I can get out there with my my pellet smoker and just get after it. You know,
That's when you know you're old. It's not even just a grill. It's not even just
It's a
your
pellet
basic
smoker.
Weber charcoal grill. You went all in. Pellet griller, low and slow, baby.
low and slow, baby.
You
That's
know.
been the last week in my eyes.
I'm gonna buy you the Barbecue Bible by Reichland. You're gonna start watching his PBS show. It's over for you.
No, it
You
is
might as well
over.
buy some Depends now.
I was doing my my meat shopping last week, and I saw that they had briskets. I think it was $51 for a big.
When
old
you
brisket.
start looking at brisket, that's when you're serious.
That's whenever you-
because you don't want to buy $50 worth of meat. I still have yet never bought a brisket because every time I look, I'm like,
I'm gonna mess this
because
up.
I mean you're 10 degrees off from messing that son of a bitch up. So when you start looking at that brisket and start seriously, that's when you know
Yeah.
your grilling skills are they're a spear.
Well,
they're fine.
My dad's made me brisket twice. The first time wasn't that great. The second time, though, he nailed it, and it was...
And that probably
delicious,
cost him
like-
$120. It took him
about that.
$120 to cook you a good meal.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah, no, but a brisket is one of those things, in my opinion. Like, if I go somewhere, I see brisket, and they look like they're brisket people, like they probably have like the real, like pit barbecue back there. Then I'm like, okay, I have to get the brisket. And the brisket, it's only great probably about 25% of the time.
Yeah.
But whenever it is great, it's worth it. All the other times that you spent money on it not being that good.
Yeah. It's a tough when you order at a restaurant, only 20% of the time you're going to get a good moist brisket. That's when you know it's serious.
Yes.
As
every
an
time.
old man griller, this was the hierarchy. You got to stick with whole chickens and ribs for a little bit, because once you get those down, you get your temperatures down, then you start working your way into that pork butt, making you some barbecue sandwiches. If you're like me, you're just too fucking cheap to ever venture into brisket range.
Yeah, no, well, I was reading online on making a brisket, and their first thing was, no one is a true grill master until they make a brisket. So I was like, all right, I might need to pump the brakes for a few weeks. I think I'm going to give it a month on this grill, and then if I'm still doing well with it, I think I'm going to try a brisket.
You know two guys that'll taste test for you.
Oh, no, I think there'll be a lot of people lined up for the brisket.
Hey, Leighton's already a two-time taster. Like, he's ahead of schedule on me.
He's a seasoned veteran.
At tasting.
I almost died once. Hopefully the brisket doesn't kill me. Hopefully it's thoroughly cooked.
No, it'll be thoroughly cooked. The only problem is, will I cook it too much? That's the problem with brisket. Sometimes it's just almost too done. So, guys, anything else before we wrap this show up?
Enjoy the live fights, you sons of bitches.
Yeah, 24 fights before we talk next week.
NASCAR starts this weekend.
NASCAR,
We should have broke that shit down. What the?
sports are back, baby. We got NASCAR. And on that note, for Drake, Leighton C., and Mr. Shackelford, Dippers, as always, stay saucy.